Hello and welcome back to our channel. First off, I wanted to wish you a very happy new year wherever this finds you. If you followed our channel for a while, you might have noticed that I took a bit of time off over Christmas, so it's been 3 weeks since our last video this time. Normal service will now be resumed for the next few months as we continue to deliver another video for you every fortnight or so. In the next few weeks, we'll continue our free course in effective financial literacy. I will remind you of many of the key topics we covered in our videos last year and cover a number of other really important subjects to help you think about how to get your finances sorted and build wealth. Today, however, I wanted to kick 2025 off with this video about financial markets and capitalism more generally. New Year is a good time to zoom out a bit and think about things in a more big picture kind of way. Hence why I wanted to start the year off on this topic. As I've said in the past, the number one investment theme of them all is human progress. This is the reason that investment works and can make you wealthy front and center. And I believe that one of the biggest problems of our time is how few people understand this fact. Because all too many people think about investment entirely in the abstract and often as something that is only for rich people. All too often, they can even think that investment is something fundamentally evil or wrong. And this is yet another reason why so few people invest, and a tragedy for millions of people, but also arguably even more importantly, for our ability to make progress as a species and for the quality of the societies we live in. One of the reasons Britain is in such a state at the moment, for example, is because we've gradually destroyed our investment culture over the last few decades. And I've written about this a fair bit in recent months. Nowadays, there's a huge amount of cynicism about financial markets and particularly about capitalism. And today I wanted to take a moment to show you just how fundamentally wrong this is and why this is and how damaging it is to all of us. If you want to maximize your chances of becoming wealthy or at least comfortably off, you need to cultivate a much more positive view of capitalism and of financial markets. If only because this will significantly increase the chance that you then get involved and become an investor. As I said last year in one of our videos, pessimists sound smart, optimists make money. And related to this topic is my suggestion that the reason all too many people are negative about financial markets and capitalism is actually quite simply because they have no detailed understanding of such things, and hence the title of this video. I appreciate that this is quite a controversial argument to make, but I'm going to make it anyway because of how I believe it's so important for all of us and for our future. So the first case I want to make is the extent to which people who rail against money and capitalism so often fail to understand what it has given us since it was invented. As I said in a recent interview, look at when financial markets were invented and then look at what humanity has achieved since then. Without the invention of money and the various capital markets which followed, you and I wouldn't be able to enjoy nearly all of the wonderful things that we do get to enjoy today. From food and shelter to hot running water and flushing toilets, and all the way through to foreign holidays, the internet, smartphones, flat screen TVs, fashion, films, music, and gaming. And here is a key point about this: the extent to which so many people take all of this incredible progress entirely for granted, particularly so-called anti-capitalists. If you consider yourself to be an anti-capitalist, as I said on a social media post recently, please take a moment or two to look around your home, your street, and your local supermarket or pharmacy and try to think really quite deeply about how little of any of the things you are looking at would exist without financial markets and capitalism. As much as 80 to 90% of everything you are looking at didn't and couldn't exist 2 centuries ago. The carpets or roads you walk on, the lights in your kitchen or on your streets, bricks, paving stones, double glazing, let alone TVs, iPhones, the internet, cars, and planes. The average British supermarket today stocks anywhere between 20,000 and 40,000 different products. And the same can be said of the average Boots, Superdrug, PC World, or Currys. Every single one of these products has come to us thanks to an incredibly complex network of farmers, manufacturers, suppliers, transport companies, and retailers. And all of this required funding. Many of these products have also required decades of research and development and billions of pounds of investment to get them to the point where you can buy them any day of the week, sometimes even for pennies, in the case of something like paracetamol, for example. Far, far too many of us take all of this massively, massively for granted. People have no detailed understanding of any of this, of just how much collaboration and capital has been required just so that you can own a kettle and enjoy coffee or tea most days, for example. There was a great post on social media not that long ago where a typically angry, clueless, cynical troll aggressively challenged tech entrepreneur Mark Andreessen to give an example of anything the tech industry has given the world. And Andreessen's response rather brilliantly highlighted the irony of the smartphone or computer, social media network, and internet connection that person was using to ask the question. He might also have mentioned the billions of dollars worth of subsea fiber optic cables, the ships that laid those cables and maintained them, the data centers, the satellites, and indeed the quite literally thousands of inventions and components that anti-capitalists require in order to be able to make their case on social media, and indeed to do pretty much everything else that they do in their lives. Similarly, another great meme went around on social media recently, which was a comedic day in the life of Greta Thunberg if she had to live without petroleum and petroleum-based products. No carpet, no toothpaste, no running water, no cooking implements to make something as simple as eggs for breakfast, and certainly no carbon fiber boats to travel across the Atlantic on, no microphones to rant into, nor TV cameras or internet to carry that rant far and wide. I think all too few of us today realize just how awful life was for most human beings ever born throughout our history. Not that long ago, nearly everyone was extremely poor, and life was very hard indeed. In 1820, it's estimated that roughly 90% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty. Today, that number is around 10%. In 1800, nearly 90% of people in the world could not read or write. And today, more than 85% of our species can, which is great news for many reasons. In 1800, more than 40% of children died before they reached their 5th birthday. And today, only around 4% do. And that number is obviously significantly lower in the rich, developed world and constantly improving in most of the developing world. The amazing progress we've made in the last few hundred years, which has improved the lives of many billions of us enormously, has come largely as a result of the invention of money, and in the last 2 centuries in particular, the invention of various financial markets based on money, such as the stock market. Because capital markets enabled us to pool enough capital and share risk so that we could do incredible things we would otherwise not have been able to do. Money is sometimes described as the root of all evil. This is arguably one of the silliest and most unhelpful ideas of all time, because ultimately money is actually just a technology. And in fact, it's arguably the most important technology we have ever invented as a species, for human progress, health, and happiness at least. Far from being the root of all evil, money and financial markets have been one of the very most important tools for lifting us all out of a life that used to be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short for most people for nearly all of history until it was invented. So people rail against capitalism because they totally fail to have a sufficiently strong appreciation of just how much it has given them so far. I'd argue that the other reason is because all too few people are aware of the many incredible things that continue to be delivered by capitalistic entities. And the reason for this has to do with the well-established fact that there is an extremely strong negative bias in our press and on social media. I covered this topic in one of our videos last year, which was called Why Pessimists Sound Smart. And the key point is that for all sorts of reasons, all you ever hear about is bad stuff. Every day, we're all bombarded with stories about war, famine, murder, disease, political corruption, evil corporations, and so much else besides. Very rarely, almost never, will you see an uplifting, positive piece about transformational new technologies or any of the wonderful progress we're actually making on so many fronts, and largely thanks to capitalistic entities. I make this case in some detail in my recent book, Our Future is Biotech, so please do check it out if you want to know more about this subject and see lots of the evidence too. In the book, I explain how many of our remaining problems as a species are about biological systems, including things like environmental degradation, climate change, plastics in our oceans, polluted soils, and so on. And crucially, I also pointed out that there are literally tens of thousands of businesses and other organizations working on all of these problems and making fantastic progress. The problem is that most people never hear anything at all about any of them. These companies need a great deal more capital to support what they're doing or trying to do, and a great deal less shrill ranting online about how dreadful everything is. Of course, capitalism isn't perfect, but I think it is far better than most people realize it is. Because so little of the amazing progress we are making makes it into our press and most people's idea of the world. We never see all the good that is being done. Yes, there are lots of problems in the world, but the way we solve these problems is by pooling sufficient amounts of capital to bring about the technological developments required to solve them. And this can and does often require tens or even hundreds of billions of pounds or dollars. Ultimately, capitalism is just a mechanism that makes that happen. And the very clear evidence of 2 centuries or more is that it does this far more efficiently and effectively than any other system we've come up with so far, and by a country mile. When you become an investor, you're more likely to understand such things because you're generally looking for upside. You'll learn more and more about human progress as a natural consequence of learning about financial markets. And of course, being wealthy also increases the chance that you can really enjoy life and have the freedom to do things like travel or spend money on the things and people that you love. Perhaps more important, though, if you care about things like the environment, poverty, hunger, or violence in the developing world, and you want to do something about those things, you'll be able to do far more if you take care of your money first, and a huge amount more if you become wealthy. There's a very famous quote, often attributed to one of the founding fathers of the United States, Benjamin Franklin, which summarizes this idea pretty nicely. As he said, to do good, you must first do well. Or put another way, you can't pour from an empty cup. The wealthier you are, the more you can do, both in terms of fun and perhaps slightly selfish stuff, like taking a dream holiday or owning a dream car, but also in terms of making a contribution to the state of the world. So to finish today, I would ask you this year to believe in human progress, to understand the amazing things financial markets have given us as a species since they were invented, to believe that this fantastic progress can and will continue and even improve, and crucially, to get involved by being an investor. So that's it for today. A slightly unusual start to the year, but hopefully you found it vaguely interesting or even useful. As ever, if you want to ensure that you're one of the first to see our videos when they're published, please do click the subscribe and bell buttons. And please do also think about subscribing to our free email service from the Plain English Finance website. And if you'd like to hear from me far more regularly than just these videos every fortnight, please do feel free to connect with me on any or indeed all of LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter or X. And until next time, I wish you the very best.